What if your backyard held a secret too dark to stay buried, and the only one who sensed it was a retired canine who refused to stop digging? Like this video if you believe dogs can sense more than humans ever could. Share it with someone who's had a pet uncover something unbelievable. Comment if your dog ever tried to tell you something and you finally listened. Subscribe for more true stories where tales uncover truths buried in silence. Sometimes the answers don't bark. They dig. The backyard smelled like damp soil and summer grass. 10-year-old Ellie sat on the porch steps, hugging her knees, watching the German shepherd claw at the base of the old fence. Scratch, sniff, dig. Again and again. Same spot, same urgency, same silence. "Ranger, stop," she mumbled, more out of habit than hope. But the dog, once a decorated police canine, didn't stop. He never did. Neighbors said he was just adjusting. Her foster mom said he was bored. But Ellie knew better. She'd seen the way his body tensed every time he hit something beneath the surface. Not roots, not rocks. Something else. Something that made his ears flatten and his tail go still. She crept down the steps and walked barefoot through the grass. Ranger paused, looked up at her, then back to the earth. He started digging again, faster this time, harder. Ellie knelt beside him, brushing away the loose dirt. And then she saw it. Just the corner of something smooth and pale. Not wood, not stone. Plastic? No. Bone. Her breath caught. Her hand froze. Ranger sat back, chest heaving, watching her face. And in that moment, Ellie didn't feel scared. She felt chosen. Ellie had learned early that quiet made you invisible, and invisible kids didn't get sent away. Again. She'd been through 4 foster homes in 2 years. Each one started the same. Smiles too wide, bedrooms too clean, promises too big, and each one ended the same. Calls made behind closed doors, packing done in silence. Goodbyes that never felt like anyone was actually saying goodbye. She didn't scream anymore, didn't argue, didn't cry, just nodded. Packed. Left. Her newest placement was with a woman named Meredith, who liked gardening, herbal teas, and not talking much. Meredith didn't ask about Ellie's nightmares or why she flinched when the phone rang. She just gave her a room, set 2 plates at the table, and spoke softly when necessary. It wasn't warmth, but it wasn't chaos either. It was something in between, something almost safe. Then came Ranger. The agency said he was no longer fit for duty, but needed a quiet home. Ellie didn't ask what happened to his partner. Ranger didn't ask what happened to her. And somehow, that made it easier. He didn't demand cuddles or wag his tail for show. He didn't lick her face or follow her around, but he sat outside her bedroom door every night. He walked beside her, not in front, not behind, and when she woke up sweating and shaking from dreams she couldn't remember, he was already there, watching, waiting. They were both quiet, both haunted, both halfway broken. But together, they started to feel whole. Until Ranger started digging, and Ellie started to remember. Meredith's garden was always quiet. Lavender, rosemary, and thyme spilled over the stone pathways, and even the bees seemed to hum softly, as if not to disturb the peace. Ellie spent hours here, wordless, unnoticed, her small hands brushing the herbs like memories. Ranger was the same. He didn't bark, didn't whine. He followed her like a shadow, steady and still. When Ellie pruned the flowers, he watched. When she sat on the porch, knees pulled to her chest, Ranger curled at her feet like he'd been waiting for that moment his whole life. The village school was small and simple. Nobody asked too many questions. Teachers whispered that Ellie was the quiet girl and let her be. But Ellie's silence wasn't emptiness. Some mornings, she woke up with a stone pressing down on her chest. The weight of things unspoken, of memories too jagged to name. On those mornings, Ranger didn't leave her side. He crawled under her bed, just enough for his amber eyes to meet hers. In those eyes, Ellie saw something. Herself, not the parts others ignored, but the parts still holding on. Wounded, yes, but here. One afternoon, Ranger started scratching beneath the porch floorboards. At first, Ellie thought it was a game, but he didn't stop. His movements were quiet, focused, determined, and Ellie would always remember that moment. Because beneath the wooden slats, something was buried, something meant to stay hidden. But there was more to uncover, and for the first time in a long while, Ellie realized she didn't want to run anymore. Ranger's paw scraped harder against the wood, his breath short and urgent. Ellie crouched beside him, confused. This wasn't like him. He never scratched without reason, never panicked. She reached under the porch floorboards where his nails had loosened the planks. Her fingers touched something hard, wrapped in a moldy towel, brittle with age. She pulled it free slowly, dust rising in the afternoon sun. Inside was a girl's shoe, tiny, torn, and stained deep red. Ellie froze, not from fear, but from knowing. This wasn't forgotten junk. This was a secret. She looked at Ranger. He sat still again now, watching her. Almost like he knew what he'd just given her wasn't just evidence. It was a story, a warning, a memory that never made it home. The next morning, she took the shoe to school in her backpack, heart pounding so hard it made her ears ring. She showed her teacher in private. And suddenly, everything changed. The police came. Questions came. The past came roaring back like a siren in the dark. They traced the shoe to a girl, reported missing 12 years ago. Same village, same street, same house. Ellie stared at the officers, her voice silent, but her eyes screaming the question no one dared to ask. What happened here? And why did Ranger find it now? The town of Millbrook hadn't had a scandal in years, until Ellie walked into class with a blood-stained shoe. Within 48 hours, the quiet halls of Hawthorne Elementary turned into a buzzing hive of whispers. Reporters circled the gates. Parents pulled their children out early. Police tape stretched across the back porch of Ellie's house. But Ellie didn't care about the noise. She cared about Ranger. Because after finding that shoe, he wasn't the same. He prowled the house at night, head low, ears pricked. He barked at corners that used to feel safe. And every morning, he returned to that painting, that cheerful, childish mural in the main hallway, with stick-figure smiles and rainbows, and barked, not loud, but sharp, purposeful, like he was telling someone, something's wrong here. Ellie told her foster dad. He brushed it off. She told the principal. He nodded politely and moved on. Only one person believed her. Ms. Carter, the school counselor. She took one look at the shoe and paled. "I remember this case," she whispered. Her name was Lucy. Ellie sat straighter. "She used to go here?" Ms. Carter hesitated, then slowly nodded. "Before she disappeared, she painted that mural, that rainbow. That was her favorite color." Ellie turned toward the hallway window. The mural looked so bright, so innocent, so wrong. And Ranger kept barking, day after day, at one spot in particular, near the base, where the blue met the green. Ellie walked up to it one afternoon when the hallway was empty. She pressed her hand against the wall and felt it, a hollow sound. Something behind the paint, something waiting. Ranger whined behind her. Ellie looked down at him. "I think we're about to find her voice." The man's name was Harold Briggs, retired detective, slight limp, faint coffee stains on his cuffs. He hadn't stepped inside a school since he quit the force 10 years ago. But when Ellie's counselor called, he came. They met in the empty library, where dust floated in shafts of light. Ranger lay at Ellie's feet, alert as ever. Harold set a thin manila folder on the table. "Lucy Denning," he said, tapping it once. "Disappeared 12 years ago. No sign of forced entry. No ransom. No body." Ellie looked at the faded photo clipped to the front. A girl with bright red curls and a smile just like hers. "She was 9, Harold said quietly. "Last seen the day she stayed after school to finish that mural." Ellie's breath caught. Harold leaned forward. "You say your dog barked at the mural?" Ellie nodded. "Always the same spot." He rubbed his jaw. "I asked the construction crew. That section was patched years ago, after a pipe burst." He pulled out a blueprint. "There's a hollow pocket in the wall. No one thought twice. Until now." Ellie's heart raced. Ranger stood and paced, eyes fixed on the doorway like he knew something was coming. Harold tapped the folder. "I failed this case once. But you, and that dog, might be what she needed all along." Ellie looked up. She didn't feel like a child anymore. She felt like someone on a mission, and she wasn't alone. It happened on a Tuesday morning. While the halls buzzed with chatter and lockers slammed shut, Ellie stood in front of the mural with Principal Harris, Harold Briggs, and a janitor named Greg holding a crowbar. Ranger sat at her side, ears forward, body tense. Ellie pointed. "Here. It's always here." Greg hesitated, then wedged the crowbar into the seam between 2 panels of painted drywall. The sound of cracking plaster echoed down the hallway. Students peeked from classrooms. Teachers whispered. The first panel came off. Nothing but darkness behind it. Greg reached for the second. Crack. Thunk. The panel hit the floor with a heavy thud, and behind it, a small metal locker, old, rusted, covered in dust and spiderwebs. Everyone froze. Ellie stepped forward. Her heart pounded so loud she thought the whole school could hear it. Greg opened the locker. Inside, a child's backpack, a spiral notebook with fading unicorn stickers, and a pink hoodie, balled up and stiff with time. Harold reached in carefully, pulled out a worn library card. "Lucy Denning," he whispered. "It's hers." Ranger let out a single bark, sharp, final. Ellie turned to Principal Harris, who looked pale. "That's been behind the mural for over a decade," he said, voice cracking. Harold didn't answer. He was too busy examining something else, taped inside the locker door. A letter, written in purple marker. "He said if I told, no one would believe me. But I have to write it down. If someone finds this, please tell my mom I didn't run away. I was scared. He made me stay." The hallway went silent. Then chaos. The police were called. News vans arrived. Parents pulled their kids from class. But Ellie stayed. She sat beside Ranger, stroking his fur as reporters swarmed the front lawn. "You did it," she whispered. "You really did it." And Ranger, silent, calm, pressed his head into her chest, because after all these years, the truth had finally barked its way out. Ellie stood at the edge of the school lawn as the sky turned orange with sunset. Ranger sat beside her, unmoving, eyes on the front doors where detectives and teachers hurried in and out. His ears twitched, but he stayed still, guarding, always guarding. Principal Harris approached slowly, his tie loosened and face lined with exhaustion. He stopped a few steps away from Ellie and knelt beside her. "I owe you an apology," he said quietly. Ellie didn't answer. "I didn't believe you, and I didn't believe Ranger. But today, you both reminded us of something important." She looked up. "That silence doesn't mean lying." He nodded. "That sometimes silence is survival." They sat for a moment longer in the soft hum of sirens and wind. Then Harold Briggs appeared, holding something tightly wrapped in plastic. The letter. "I just spoke to Lucy's mother," he said, voice rough. "She cried. Not because she's angry, but because now she knows." Ellie pressed her hand against Ranger's head. His tail thumped once. "She never stopped looking," she said. "No," Harold agreed. "But until today, she didn't know where to look." A gust of wind blew across the lawn. Ellie reached into her pocket and pulled out a crumpled drawing. Her own. It showed a girl and a dog standing in front of a rainbow mural, the colors starting to fade. She handed it to Harold. "Can we paint a new one?" she asked. "With Ranger in it this time?" Harold blinked, then smiled. "I think that's a brilliant idea." Ellie turned to Ranger. "You saved her, and you saved me too." And for the first time since she met him, Ranger leaned into her side, not like a guard dog, but like a friend, a silent, loyal shadow who had given voice to the truth. The days that followed felt like slow motion. News vans parked outside the school. Reporters asked questions Ellie didn't want to answer. How did a child and a retired police dog uncover something the adults missed? Did she know the victim? Why did the dog target that specific mural? But Ellie stayed quiet. It was Principal Harris who spoke to the cameras, voice calm but firm. "Ranger is more than a retired canine. He is a hero. And Ellie listened to him when no one else did. That made all the difference." Inside the school, the mural had been carefully removed and replaced with a blank canvas. The students were invited to paint a new one, this time with Ellie's drawing as the guide. A rainbow still stretched across the top, but now, beneath it stood a girl with messy, light brown hair and a bright blue coat, her hand resting on the head of a proud German shepherd. Healing came in brushstrokes, in quiet conversations, in moments when teachers asked questions and waited for answers, no longer rushing to conclusions. Ranger became a symbol, not just of bravery, but of listening when it mattered most. Children left him treats at the school gate. Parents patted his head with tears in their eyes. Ellie didn't speak to everyone, but when she did, her voice was steady, stronger, as if something had shifted inside her, like a locked door finally opening. And through it came not just her words, but her story. 2 weeks later, Ellie stood at the front of her classroom, fingers twisting the hem of her shirt. Ranger sat beside her, his ears perked, his gaze calm and steady. Her teacher, Mrs. Palmer, nodded gently. "Whenever you're ready, Ellie." The class fell silent. Ellie took a breath, then another, and then she spoke. "My name is Ellie," she said, voice quiet but clear. "And I didn't used to talk much. A few kids glanced at each other. "But I met someone," she continued, resting her hand on Ranger's back. "He listened even when I didn't say anything, and he believed me, when I didn't even believe in myself." She looked down at Ranger, who blinked up at her with those deep, knowing eyes. He found what no one else saw, and because of him, a little girl gets to be remembered, not hidden. The room was still. No giggles, no interruptions, just hearts opening, one by one. Mrs. Palmer wiped her eyes. Ranger gave a low, proud bark. Ellie smiled for the first time in front of a crowd, and not the kind of smile you wear to hide. A real one. The kind that says, "I'm not invisible anymore, and I never was." A month later, Ellie stood on the small stage of the town library, facing rows of people, teachers, parents, neighbors, reporters. Behind her, a large framed photo of the missing girl, Lily Ann, now recovered, smiled gently beside a blown-up image of the ripped school mural. And beside Ellie, sitting tall and calm, was Ranger. She took a breath. "My name is Ellie Jensen. And a few months ago, I didn't have a voice." A quiet hush fell over the room. I thought no one would believe me, that the things I saw, the things I remembered, didn't matter. She looked down at Ranger, whose tail gave a slow thump. But then, he did. The crowd leaned in. He saw what I couldn't say. He barked when no one listened, and when people told me to forget. He helped me remember. Her voice grew stronger. Because of Ranger, a little girl was found. Because of Ranger, the truth behind a painting was uncovered. And because of Ranger, I'm not afraid to speak anymore. A pause. Then a ripple of applause. Then a standing ovation. But it wasn't the noise that mattered. It was the girl in the front row, clutching a tattered notebook to her chest, tears in her eyes, and the police officer who bent down to quietly scratch Ranger's ears, whispering, "Good boy." Ellie stepped down from the stage, hand on Ranger's back. The world hadn't changed, but she had, and that was enough. The mural at Hawthorne Elementary was never repainted. Instead, the school added a plaque beneath the torn canvas. It read, "In honor of the truth uncovered, and the courage of those who refuse to stay silent." Dedicated to Ellie Jensen and Ranger, retired K-9. Students walked past it every day, some still too young to understand what had happened behind that painting. But teachers told the story now, not with fear, but with pride. Ellie returned to school not as the quiet girl in the back row, but as someone different, someone who had faced darkness and chosen light. Ranger was officially adopted by Ellie's family. His badge was placed in a shadow box on the mantel next to Ellie's crayon drawing of the mural as it should have been, complete, honest, bright. At night, Ellie no longer checked the closet or flinched at footsteps. She slept with Ranger curled at her side, his breathing steady, his warmth anchoring her to a world where monsters could be defeated. And sometimes she'd wake up early before the sun and find him sitting by the window, watching, guarding, remembering. Because heroes don't always wear capes. Sometimes they wear fur, and sometimes they rip through paint and lies to bring the truth into the light.